Welcome to the Johnny Dell Football Academy podcast on the channel that's trying to answer the whys and hows of the game by talking through and dissecting game film and diving deeper to explain why the X's zig and the O's zag. I am Adam Marino, joined by Mr. Johnny Dell, and we are reminding you, as always, the most fun way to watch is on YouTube, where we go live. There you can comment into the live show. Be sure to hit the notification bell and turn on your notifications so you can be a part of the conversation. We also stream live on Facebook and X. Also, the audio versions are always found on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Now, if you are live with us in the chat, it's probably because you are subscribed, you've hit the notification bell, and turned those notifications on. So, when sharing with your friends, be sure to let them know. We also love to hear from you outside of our live show. Email us at johnnydellsfootballacademy@gmail.com, and you can always check out the website JFA49.com, as it is the most fun way to support the channel. Also, the way we boost the chat and boost the algorithm is to type out hashtag JD49. Yes, right. We are here. After the technical difficulties, we are here. It is Friday, because it's the day before a game day. And I will let you guys know, first off, I may cut it out of here and leave you guys go because I am on my way to Nashville, Tennessee to see our second, third, and fourth, and fifth, and sixth stringers go against the Titans scrubs. So I am super stoked because I will be hanging out with my boys from Sports Idiot Nation. Thank you to some of you who have chimed in on that podcast, by the way. Go to Sports Idiot Nation wherever you follow social media, and then also on YouTube. Just like you're catching us now, you can catch new shows every Monday and Thursday. So thank you to those who have already commented and watched. It's awesome to have you guys on that platform as well. I am just jazzed and ready to go because also of a famous friend of the show is back. DreArea Sports, what is going down, baby?
What's going on, you guys? Dude, I'm just jazzed. I'm pumped for 49er football, which is coming back tomorrow, which is just saying that out loud makes you feel so much better about like my life and everything. So it's like, yes, Niner football is back and it starts tomorrow, but training camp has been going on for what?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. And it's been exciting. I mean, a lot of injuries, but I think a lot of these injuries are kind of small, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah, I'm just super excited, man.
Big time stoked. Yes, sir. So let's get into I got to give a shout out on X real quick to John Chapman, which, by the way, I hope to be taking a selfie with him real soon. But he tweeted a GIF of Simone Biles going like this. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, it's the best way to watch us. And if you're live with us, I'm going to give you
They should know that by now. That's kind of like a
that's
thing
kind of the
around.
Thing, right?
Yeah, everybody knows that snap look.
That snap look, right? So whenever our phone goes off about a Niners notification, that's us right now, right? So let's, as we are talking 7:39 in the AM local San Francisco time, up to the second, what is the latest and what are our thoughts? Dre, take it first as Johnny's taking a break, it looks like.
Well, my thoughts right now are on what's happening with Brandon Aiyuk. I mean, there's so many back and forth discussions happening with Brandon Aiyuk. I think Johnny just got some insider information, so he might want to share that.
Yeah. So my wife, we've been trying to get my 2-year-old son into the ENT for a long time. We think he needs some tubes. All my kids have had tubes so far, and so I am here. My 7-year-old is at school right now. They started school, but pre-K, where my other daughter is, they had their first day yesterday, and then they're off today. So I have her in the other room, and so she was coming in like that news, that BBC reporter moment was coming into my wife's office. That's why I'm here. But yeah, we are all, every time there's a notification for 49ers roster stuff or moves, and it seems like every day some new or different information is coming out about the Brandon Aiyuk situation. I was on Ryan's show yesterday, and we talked about some of that stuff. And then TJ Hushmanzada, Oregon State Beaver alum, go Beavs.
TJ, who's your mama? TJ,
and most people forget that him and Chad Johnson were teammates at Oregon State, and then they both got drafted onto the Bengals the same year. Yeah. But TJ Hushmanzada was there, and now he's giving out some other information. I do have some thoughts on that. We'll get into that in a little bit. I'm not sure I'm fully buying what TJ is saying. I don't think it's that simple.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's more or less he's making a statement to support his guy Brandon Aiyuk, but I don't think it's 100%. The fact of they're only a couple million off. I think it's more than that. But my thing is this though, is that, like, to me at least, it feels like the Niners are being very generous. I mean, they're letting him seek out his own trade. They're letting him do all these things when they're not. What they're not doing is playing a hardball with him, saying, listen, you can sit out all you want. We're going to fine you for every preseason game you sit out. And then we are going to play you on your 5th year, and then we're going to franchise you. It's like there's so many ways they can go about this, but yet they're going about it in, I would say, a much more generous way by saying, hey, look, why don't you go seek out your own trade? Now, it could be a case where they're doing this because they feel like, hey, go seek out your own trade. You're going to find out that no one's going to offer you what we want, and you're going to end up signing with us anyway. So I'm not sure what their exact game plan is, but I feel like they're being very generous towards Brandon Aiyuk.
Yeah, I was just at the barber today. I wanted to get a nice little cleanup, as you guys can see.
It looks beautiful, by the way.
For my trip to Nashville, need to look good for Hawk Tua. And so I was talking to the barber. He knows I'm a big time Niner guy, and he said, "So what is the deal overall?" And I said, "Here's the thing that I think about. Brandon Aiyuk his family were 49er fans. If I think of it as a Brandon Crawford, remember there's pictures of him at Candlestick saying San Francisco Giants don't leave, and then he was our beloved shortstop. Classic story where you play for your hometown team. Like, come on. But if everyone around you, and I told this to the barber, if everyone around you is getting $20 an hour and you're getting $16 an hour, and you're cutting hair and meeting cool people at the dream venue that you want to cut hair with, and with your boss is amazing, but you're getting $16 an hour and everyone else is getting 20, would you feel some type of way? And he stopped he stopped buzzing for a second, and that made him think. And so I'm like, I wonder if it's that to feel disrespected, to have that level of disrespect in your own head. Now, we don't think that he's being disrespected, but the point is, we're not the one catching touchdowns. He is. Mm-hmm. So when he feels a little bit disrespected, as a man, he's just supposed to walk through those hallways. He's just supposed to dap up everyone. He's just supposed to put on that SF helmet. Is that what he's just supposed to do? A real man says, no, I don't play that. I kind of want to. Now, he can only play his version of hardball because, like we've talked about, and Johnny has been on this train big time, and I see him on Twitter, like, bashing people. Not bashing, but, like, hitting him. He's not a basher. I said that wrong. He has his little whack-a-mole, like, that's not right. That's not right. That's not right. Where he doesn't really have that much leverage, because at the end of the day, we can have him on his 5th year option, and then we can franchise him. We can just, we can play a better hardball version than what he can. Am I looking at this correctly, Dre?
I think so. I mean, look, I feel like Johnny's been kind of saying the same thing over and over again, and kind of reiterating the same statement. That's a better way of saying it. Like, look, like I said, they're being generous. I mean, like, they don't have to do this. They don't have to let him seek out a trade. They don't have to do that. I mean, look at CeeDee Lamb. Jerry Jones is like, I'm not worried about his contract at this moment. You know what I mean? He's just like, I don't want to talk about that. That's not what I'm concerned about. But to me, look, I think that they need to figure this thing out, because now it's starting to become a distraction. You got other guys out there saying that like, oh, the vibe at training camp is really low. I mean, you don't know that just based on just watching them practice. You're not in the locker room. They're not, in there as they're socializing. But look, at least Brandon Aiyuk is there. He's in the meetings. He's in everything but being on the field. But I just think they got to figure it out because I mean this is a premier receiver that they really rely on, and I think that if you eliminate him, then who do you go to? Who steps up in place of Brandon Aiyuk in this offense?
I don't know.
Yeah. So I think, Adam, kind of back to what you were saying, like I've been reiterating on Twitter and Dre, what you were saying here, the 49ers really do have the leverage here.
Yeah,
absolutely.
People are sitting here saying, Aiyuk is going to LeBron himself into
he's not.
a team, or he's going to, he has all the leverage with the 49ers, and the 49ers just need to pay the man.
He's under contract.
Okay. He's under contract.
What are we talking about?
He cannot, and people are like, well, he could sit out 11 weeks and then just report for the last 6. That's a huge one. Okay, there's several things about that. One, that's a huge gamble. What if not playing football for essentially 3 months?
Yeah, dude.
He's going to come back, and if he pulls a hamstring, then he doesn't accrue his 5th year season. So his 5th year rights revert back to the 49ers. He's right back where he was, and he misses about $12 million. That's a lot of
money.
There's 12 million reasons to keep playing through that time. Like because I've seen people say that, well, can't he, it's like they're trying to, this is what drives me nuts about the social media world, is that sometimes people will stake a claim on something, and then when you offer a thoughtful or any sort of reasonable counter to that, people just like, it's like they won't even open their mind to that. They immediately go into defense mode and say, no, he could still do that because he could still sit out 11 weeks and still get those 6 accrued games. That's a big gamble. He has to hope that he doesn't miss a single game the rest of the time.
Yeah.
Or he's got to show up for and accrue 6 games and then sit out the rest of the year and leave his team hanging.
That's a bad look.
That is a horrible look. Their teams would not touch him with a 20. He would not get anything close to what he's trying to seek. Okay, if the 49ers are reportedly, offering him $26 million a year, that is $104 million. He's not going to get anywhere close to that if he were to accrue 6 games and then sit out the rest of the year. And plus, he would lose around $10 million. Like, that is a really bad idea. He is not incentivized to do that. That is not a realistic option for him. The most realistic option is that if the 49ers pull that move and say, you are going to be with us on this 5th year option. And they've said this going back to his 4th year, of saying, we are comfortable with Brandon Aiyuk playing on his 5th year option. They're comfortable with that. Because again, people say, well, do you really want a disgruntled receiver in there causing locker room issues? I go, here's the thing. If Brandon Aiyuk becomes a huge locker room distraction, if Brandon Aiyuk does not perform, if he only gets an 800-yard receiving year, that is a huge red flag for the rest of the league. Again, because they're going to look at it and say, well, is this guy a 1-year wonder? They're not going to be able to say, as my daughter's trying to come into the office again, go watch your movie, baby girl. I put her show on for her.
Like, oh, I want to hear about the
we
Niners.
have our show
She
on.
does. She does.
She's put hers on.
That Brandon Aiyuk, people are going to say this was his only big time production year, and teams are very reticent to give $29 million, $30 million, $32 million to a 1-year guy who's shown it. Now, I think Brandon Aiyuk is really a quality receiver. But to say that he's got the leverage and the 49ers don't because they can't do that, and that they'll have a disgruntled wide receiver and that he won't play really hard. If he doesn't play hard, then he hurts himself. That is the leverage here. Yes, he could do those things, but he hurts himself as much or more than he hurts the 49ers. He really does.
So then when you look at that, here's what happens then, Johnny, because all right, we're talking a few $2-3 million. If he takes less now, balls out, does well with the Niners, we win the freaking Super Bowl, worst best case scenario. Then okay, you look at if he does what he's doing now and what the scenario that you're talking about, that could cost him more than just $2 million. Like, if you're a betting man, wouldn't you just bet on yourself, take a little less with the understanding that you're gonna ball out, hopefully win a Super Bowl, and then the money will come? Why would you gamble when, first of all, you're gambling by turning down 32 million from the Patriots, supposedly, right?
Yeah,
So
32
now,
million.
okay, then you're already that was a surefire thing. I get that you don't want to play in New England because Tom Brady is not coming back because Fox is paying him too much to not come back. So I get that. So because of
That
that,
and
you don't want to go there. Fine.
Father Time really is unbeaten. So
Yeah, yeah.
there's
And
also that.
I mean, he did give him a pretty good knockout blow for about 10 years, though.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, though, when you do that math, guys, the math ain't mathin'. Like,
Well,
just take the money, bro.
Well, and
Just
this
take
is
the
where
money.
this is where I think, and so look, people have also said I feel bad for Brandon Aiyuk, and I saw somebody say, would you tell your son to take less money if Brandon Aiyuk was your son, and so put yourself in his position. Look, I have compassion up to a point. We're not talking about that this is a guy looking at making $2 million versus $5 million. That is a big difference. Right. That's a big difference. We're talking $104 million versus $120 million. You're still over north of $100 million. I don't have as much compassion once you cross the $100 million threshold. I'm like, all right, cool. You can buy 30 more Ferraris now. Like, I just I get it to a point, but I also don't get it. I don't have as much compassion of saying, look, he's doing what's in best. I understand. And that's where I think this really does. If we're talking, TJ Husmann-Zada is saying that he's willing to accept 28 to stay in San Francisco, and they're offering 26. I think this is more than just $2 million a year.
Yeah,
I think a lot of it has to do with incentives.
Yeah, guarantees.
Because I think it's incentives and guarantees. I think those are really the biggest hangups, and that's why New England was willing to pay 32, because they're not going to put those incentives into his contract, because he knows with their very, let's be generous and say, fluid quarterback situation that they've had there, that he is not confident that if they give him certain incentives that he would even get close to meeting that, and that wouldn't be his fault. So they have to offer $32 million a year, because they can't offer him $2 million in incentives if he makes the Pro Bowl, because that's probably pretty unlikely this next year. So they have to offer him more in cash. I think there's an issue of incentives there, and those incentives trickle down into really the basis of all this, which is the 49ers are not a pass first team. They're a 50-50 run pass team. They throw the ball the least amount of times in the league. And now they've added another first round wide receiver. And Brandon Aiyuk is going to say, the likelihood of me getting more targets than last season is nearly zero. The likelihood of me getting less targets this year is actually probably 75%. And so almost surely a guy whose production was second best in the league as far as the yards per catch, that it's probably not going to be higher. He's not going to get the same amount of yards, probably not going to get the same targets, catches, touchdowns. Everything's probably going to decrease a little bit on that, in that respect. So his incentives much less likely to be hit. So if the 49ers are saying, we'll pay you 26 and we'll pay you $2 million more if you make all pro, we'll pay you $2 million more if you are a 1,500-yard receiver, we'll pay you $2 million more if you get 10 touchdown catches. Or we'll pay $1 million if you hit 10 touchdown catches and another $1 million if you make 13 touchdown catches, something like that. They're going to sit there and say, they're going to love that idea, And they're going to say, well, we are offering you $28 million. And Brandon Aiyuk is going to say, no, you're not, because I'm not used in that way. It's a lot harder for me to get those incentives and hit those benchmarks than it would be for me if I was on the Cowboys, for example, or I was with the Washington Commanders.
But Dak sucks, so he won't go.
And again, you also start looking at what are the teams that have been in the mix to get Brandon Aiyuk. I think the Browns were in the mix, and they were about to send a receiver back. I really do. I think they were the team that the 49ers were probably most comfortable with, and I'm pretty sure, again,
but
Brandon Aiyuk.
It wasn't going to be Cooper, though.
It was either going to be Cooper or Judy. I mean, so they have $47.5 million tied up between those two guys. And so they to give Brandon Aiyuk a contract, they were going to have to send one of those two.
Yeah.
So, and Cooper makes more sense because he's 5 years older. That I think was the most realistic trade that was there. And reportedly Brandon Aiyuk didn't want to go there. And I would also be surprised if with Jerry Jeudy there at $17.5 million and Deshaun Watson's toxic contract that they have, that they were willing to give him $30 million a year.
I think
they were looking at, and we don't know what the personal dynamics there of Brandon Aiyuk and that quarterback situation. Deshaun Watson has not been good.
No.
He has not been good.
No.
I mean, Joe Flacco, the corpse of Joe Flacco came onto that team, and they looked miles ahead of anything that had happened with Deshaun
he was
Watson on that team.
Offensive player of the month, and
yeah, he looked great. And then he got to the playoffs, and it was like,
well, it was Joe Flacco again.
Yeah,
and it was Joe Flacco again.
He turned back to a pumpkin, you know.
But think about how bad Joe Flacco looked in the
Glass
playoffs.
flipper.
Deshaun Watson looked worse in the regular season.
He did.
Fair,
He looked like
that's
shit.
fair.
So
he looked
like
terrible.
I don't blame Brandon Aiyuk for being like, and it's the Browns. I mean,
It's the
I think he's going
Browns.
like, I don't want to be in that situation. So I don't blame him for turning that down. But the team that has been most in talks and in the Steelers, they have no money sunk into receivers. Their top paid receiver in average per year is Cordell Patterson at $3 million a year.
Wow. Cordell
That is their
Patterson
top paid wide receiver.
Is
But not only
57
that-
years old.
He's 33.
He's
But
33.
but George Pickens, they're the guy that a lot of people are saying that they need to get back. The Steelers aren't going to deal with Pickens. They have him cheap. He's 23. They have him at $1.7 million a year. Like they are not sending him back. That is a huge value add and positive there. So that's a hang up there in that is that what are the Steelers willing to give up? And I don't think they're willing to give up a ton. This is a situation where, again, I think it's the way that things are starting to look, and the rumors now are that the 49ers are fishing around looking at, is there a 3-team deal? Because what they're not going to do is they're not going to go into next season. And this is where I do appreciate where the 49ers are standing on this. And I know I'm in the minority with that, people. And this isn't a homer defense of the team take, is that I like that they're saying we are not going to lose quality. Our wide receiver room is not going to be half of what it was last year going into this year. That is off the table for us. And that's what I think the biggest hang up in some of these trades too, is that they're saying we are not going to go into next year either without multiple first round picks that we can now approach other teams with, that they would be able to approach teams that might want to unload a guy and say, here, we are willing to offer 2 first round picks and a third because they get that from Brandon Aiyuk. They could go pick up. Either they're trying to do that or give us a quality receiver back. And with the asking price of Brandon Aiyuk, there's only a handful of teams that meet that criteria. And the Steelers won't give up enough. Browns and Patriots, they will pay him and they'll give up enough back. Probably, I'm just guessing the Patriots are giving a lot of draft capital. I'm guessing the Browns were offering one of probably Amari Cooper and maybe like a 5th round pick or something like that. But I think those are the only realistic trade options for Brandon Aiyuk. And I think that's what now you're seeing this. And that's why I think now you're seeing TJ Houshmandzadeh come out and say, well, they're only $2 million apart. Why is this now being leaked after we've had this flurry with the Steelers? And that doesn't look like it's going to go through because the Steelers won't give up the 49ers. I think Brandon Aiyuk is realizing the market, the trade market for him, the market for him to go to another team and get paid what he wants is not nearly as flush as I think he thought it was going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
When
it's
he
not
said, I
fruitful
demand a
either.
trade.
Yeah.
It's not there. You don't have the Houston Texans coming and banging down the door. Why? Because the Texans already have a lot of money tied up in wide receiver. They just paid Nico Collins. They signed Stephon Diggs. They have $46 million a year tied up in those two guys. They're not coming. And they also have Robert Woods at another $7.6 million. They're good. They're not coming for you. The Seahawks, obviously, that there would be no trade there. The Saints can't afford you. The Ravens aren't coming for you. They can't afford you. They got issues. You know, like who's coming for you?
The Chiefs aren't.
The Chiefs are not going to.
The Chiefs are not. They can't. Yeah, they're not able to do that, and definitely the 49ers wouldn't even listen to that trade doc.
Right.
Oh my goodness. You know, the Eagles aren't coming for you because they've got huge money paid up in Devontae Smith and AJ Brown.
And
the Dolphins aren't coming for you because they've got huge money tied up in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. The Cowboys aren't coming for you because they have CeeDee Lamb, who they're trying to sign.
Yeah.
And they can't because they also have another $10 million tied up in Brandon Cooks.
Packers
aren't. They just gave
Jordan Love that big contract.
Jordan Love a big contract. They're looking at that they can't afford this over the next few years. It comes down to there's not a lot of teams that are willing to go get your services. The Bears aren't. They're paying Keenan Allen and DJ Moore.
They're set. Yeah, they have their receivers.
They got $47 million tied up in those receivers. So.
You know, it's funny. We go through these teams, actually, guys, like realistically, and of course, you look at Aiyuk wouldn't go to half of these teams because they're not in good situations. But you look at the teams that are in good situations, not frigid cold, and it's like, buddy, you didn't think through this, and now it's coming to fruition very, very soon. The only question is when, and we're just gonna have to hang tight. I want to shift gears a little bit, and before we do, I want to remind you guys that because it was pointed out at my sexy shirt that I am wearing, and you can throw that into your wish list easily by clicking the link that Johnny is going to send. It's that firstwilkerson.com. Throw that in the chat, Johnny. You can pick up these shirts. Are in gray, in black, and in white, and on the back they say Johnny Dell's Football Academy on the back of the t-shirt. So very cool. Also, shout out to PowerBrandSystems that helps us set all this up. Our website. Make sure you check out the website if you have not already. And then the last thing before we shift gears, I want to give Dre an opportunity to make sure if people are not following you, go ahead and drop that knowledge, Dre. Where can people find you? And then I want to get into where the roster stands as we move forward.
Yeah. No, you can find all my content over at nicotina.net, or just go to YouTube and go to DreArea Sports. It's one of the few names that when you type in, there's only one DreArea Sports, so it comes up right away, which is great. So check out DreArea Sports. I'm going to be doing weekly streams about the 49ers 3 days a week with more content coming, so definitely check out DreArea Sports over on YouTube. I know you're going to switch gears real quick, but I just want to say one more thing about Brandon Aiyuk.
Absolutely.
When you look at, since he's been drafted, right, he has 269 catches. He's 29th in the NFL. He's got 3,900.
Go through all of them. Yes, sir. Yeah, I've seen this.
3,931 yards. He's 17th in the NFL. He averages about 63 yards per game. That's 31st in the NFL. Again, we talk about the Niners not being a very pass-heavy team. And then he has 25 touchdowns. He tied for 17th in the NFL. And this guy wants $30 million a year. It's like, look, I think with the Niners, what they're saying is we have an equation and we have a plan for how we're going to keep this core together. Now you're screwing that up because you're trying to go 30 million plus. And then now all of a sudden you're like, well, I mean, I only wanted 28. It's like, man, look, I don't know how many millions equate to now I'm comfortable. If any of us even got $900,000, you'd be like, oh my God, this is amazing. This guy wants $30 million a year from a team that is already loaded Where is he going to go? The Patriots were like, we'll pay you $32 million, and then we'll have Drake May and Jacoby Brissett throw you passes. It's going to be cold. It's going to be, extremely cold late in the season. No, I don't want to do. I don't want to go there. You guys aren't going to be that good. Okay, cool. You go to the Steelers, right? And they were willing to offer something, and now there's talk about the Niners might get a third team involved so that they can get Devontae Adams, which, I mean, hey, look, I wouldn't be mad about that. I mean, Devontae Adams is a talent, and he's bigger, and to me, Devontae Adams, if he's on the field, he's a much bigger threat than Brandon Aiyuk in terms of
it's a true one. It's a true
and just straight notoriety. When if you had him on the field with Debo and Kittle and everybody else, you're like, what do I do? You know what I mean? Like, you play everybody straight up for the most part, right? And then you look at all the other teams that we were talking about. The Niners have shown, like, hey, look, you can work out a contract with whoever you want. At the end of the day, if we're not going to get
the value,
proper compensation for your talents, you're not going anywhere, dude.
It's a no for me, dog.
It's like, hey, look, they value you, right? They want to give you the contract that you so badly desire, right? But look what they're giving us in return. I mean, George Pickens is not even involved in the trade. And they were smart to say, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm giving up one of our best receivers, arguably our number one receiver, and you're not even going to give us a receiver in return? They have offensive linemen that are good. I mean, even Pat Freiermuth. We need a backup tight end really bad. I'm like, hey, he'd be great. But that's not with Brandon Aiyuk. Get the hell out of here. No way.
You got to give us a lot more.
So I want to address here what Strawberry is talking about in the chat, because I think this is the pushback, right? Which is, I don't think he's asking for $30 million though, and people are saying the Jimmy G tax, and those numbers have a lot to do with Jimmy G. Well, okay, let's just look at the 2023 season, and you see why I talk about the incentives. I think and the guaranteed money is where the real difference is. Brandon Aiyuk was 36th in targets last season. There's 32 teams in the NFL. So he was 36th in amount of targets last year. 32 teams in the NFL, and he's 36th in targets. That is a huge difference of why him and the 49ers cannot agree on an incentive structure. That's why I believe that. He believes he's a top 5 wide receiver. There are 30 players in the NFL who are getting more targets who he feels that he's better than.
And the numbers show that he's better, because when you do show how many yards, how many touchdowns, and you do the math, he is better, honestly.
And so if we look at, for example, top receivers. So Brandon Aiyuk at 36th in targets was 7th in yards. Okay. So getting a lot more production per target than a lot of other guys. But if we look at his catch percentage, meaning the percentage of balls thrown his way that are caught, he's at 71.4%. There's only a couple players in the top end of the league that are better than him. That's CeeDee Lamb at 74.6, Amon-Ra St. Brown at 72.6. Tyreek Hill is 69.6. So he's got a better catch percentage. You're more likely to get a catch throwing to Brandon Aiyuk than Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill just gets huge volume. Puka Nacua, everybody loved Puka Nacua. He was unstoppable, 65.6%. So Brandon Aiyuk is a good clip above that. DJ Moore, I think the best comp in this area for Brandon Aiyuk is DJ Moore. 70.6% was his catch percentage. When you look at yards per target, Brandon Aiyuk was second in the entire league last year at 12.8. The only guy that was above him was Khalil Shakir from Buffalo, who he had 611 yards last year. He was just a little bit better. It's success percentage, which is the percentage of it's considered a successful pass is something that gains at least 40% of the yards needed for a first down. Brandon Aiyuk was 3rd in the league and better than all the top end receivers. So, 70% of the time, Brandon Aiyuk got more than 40% of the yards needed to get a first down. So you move the chains with him. You get good production when he gets the targets. The issue is the volume of targets. Is that those numbers and exactly what we're talking about, where you're saying, well, you're 36th in this, you're 30th in that, you're 29th in that. The 49ers are approaching him with that. This is where I think personal feelings start to get involved. And I've talked about that it gets personal. And I talked about this going back into February, that this was going to be a hang up because the 49ers were going to take that approach and he's going to turn around and take this approach and say, yeah, but when I get targeted, I'm better than everybody else.
Yeah, but
I'm better than so many
people. Because look, you want more targets? Okay, you're going to go to the Patriots. You're going to go to the Steelers, and you're going to have Drake May. You're going to have Justin Fields throwing you the ball. Russell Wilson at his old age throwing you the ball. I'm sorry, but like, you want more receptions, you want bigger numbers. You can go get those numbers, but you're not going to be in contention to win anything. And so then the question becomes, is this about money or about winning? And
I think that's why he turned down. I think that's why he turned down New England, right? He did turn down New England. So I think there is room for a compromise here. I think there's room for that. The question is, how high are the 49ers willing to go? They're trying to deal with a situation with Trent Williams. We're not talking about Trent Williams. Everybody assumes that's going to be done, right? Well, we have an issue, right? Right now we have $52 million in cap.
Well, I was trying, but you guys won't let me.
Well, I mean, we can segue that into some of these things we're looking into for preseason, because I think they all tie in together. This all ties into the Brandon Aiyuk situation. If this was 2020 49ers, Brandon Aiyuk would be signed yesterday.
Well, yeah.
Bet one of the highest paid receivers in the league. The issue is they have a lot of good players on their team. They have a lot of guys that need to be retained. So this isn't just. And I got in an argument with somebody last night on Twitter, and I mean, I'm bad about that.
It's so easy to on Twitter.
Well, it is, and somebody like actually messaged me about it. They're like, "Dude, that guy's not going to listen. I've been doing this. Don't get frustrated." I said, "I'm not frustrated. What I'm doing is I'm presenting. Don't just say they have to pay the man. Don't just say get this signed and then not offer how does the team stay competitive in 2025. You have to answer, because anything that says pay Brandon Aiyuk has to be answered with how does the team stay competitive in 2025. They have to figure that out. That has to work. The structure of the contract has to work. This is not as simple as, well, you just pay him because you'll lose 2024. Well, you could lose 2024 in week 3 if Brock Purdy tears his ACL.
Yeah.
God forbid that.
And they got to pay him too.
But and they're going to pay him no matter what happens with that. But so you don't know what's going to happen in each year. So you can't. It is grossly irresponsible. I hate we're all in on this season as our Super Bowl. You set yourself up to compete for one each year because you never know what happens. It's a long season. You could lose your quarterback week 3. Your opposing team that you end up facing in the Super Bowl could lose their quarterback in quarter 1 of the Super Bowl. What happens is you set your team up the best you can for a chance to compete that year, because you cannot guarantee that between now and then you won't lose half your roster like we did in 2020. So you set yourself up. You don't bury the next year because you're so desperate to get it this year. The teams that we've seen teams try and do that. People will talk about like the Rams, that they did that. Well, the Rams actually were doing that year over year over year, and they were in contention for years. And then they finally cracked it because Patrick Mahomes didn't make it to the Super Bowl. They didn't have to beat him in the Super Bowl. And, so you never know what's going to happen there. So because right now the 49ers have a problem. They have Aaron Banks is not signed for next year. He's our starting left guard. Mooney Ward is not signed for next year. He's a starting corner. Diamador Lenore is not signed for next year. He's a starting corner. Talanoa Hufanga is not signed for next year. He's a starting safety. Dre Greenlaw is not signed for next year. He's a starting linebacker. You have 5 starters that are not signed for next year.
But you want to sign Aiyuk for $28 million.
Brock, and here's the thing. People like keep saying, well, Brock Purdy's numbers aren't going to hit until 2026, 2027. No, there will be an increase on Brock Purdy's cap number next year. Absolutely. It's impossible to not to. It is literally impossible. They, no matter what kind of tricks they try and pull, they cannot make his cap number be lower next year than it is, because it is the lowest it can be next year. He may not even count on the top 51 this year. So it cannot be lower than it is, because he's at the minimum on his salary already. He was the last pick in the draft. So if they give him, like, for example, a $50 million bonus, it's a 5-year contract, his cap number will increase by $10 million next year. That's there. The 49ers right now are $38 million over the cap for 2025. They have $52 million in this year. A lot of that's going to get rolled over. So you're talking $14 million over the cap. If you give Brock Purdy that, you have $10 million. Now you have $4 million left. Brandon Aiyuk is not signed. You have 5 other starters not signed. That's where I posted that to somebody. I said, you need to tell me how Diamador Lenore and Mooney Ward don't walk next year if they sign Brandon Aiyuk. And he said, no, they'll sign one of them. And I said, how? No, they'll sign one of them.
With what?
You can't just say it in the air. I posted the screenshot of there are $38 million over the cap next year. Tell me how it happens. That's why it may seem like, well, they're pinching pennies. They have to. They're somewhere in here, Brandon Aiyuk has got to take less than I think he's wanting to. And if not, the 49ers, that's why they're comfortable with him playing on a 5th-year option. Either that or give us a receiver who helps us be competitive this year for a Super Bowl. That is their stance. I promise you. They will not go into this season without another receiver that can produce at least 1,000 yards is what they're looking for, or Brandon Aiyuk on a 5th-year option. They're comfortable with that because then that gives them a chance to evaluate Ricky Pearsall, see where he's at, evaluate Debo, and then if you go into 2025, you can say, look, we're willing to ship Debo off. Because Debo, we can't count on him as much. Another team will pick up his salary. We can unload Debo's salary and then turn around. And now we will bring Brandon Aiyuk back. We can do that because we can tag him. Yeah. We can, and other teams can't have him. So then his option is get paid what you want to get paid with us and stay here. You know, this is all business. And that's how they can move forward. I think that's their approach. If I was John Lynch, that's exactly what I would do.
Yeah, I think that everyone was on BA's side at the very beginning of this, and I think it's starting to shift. And I love comments from Glass City and CJ Gray who point out the knowledge that you give in regarding to, you can't just do this because the way the contract comes later or this, it's just the way that you dissect film. So again, this channel is about the whys and hows of the game, and that's why I love being a part of it, because there's no other channel like this, guys. So thank you everyone for commenting in and being with us. Thanks to Dre. As we shift gears, I want to talk through the way the roster is now, and let's pair that up to what's going to go down tomorrow. We talked about earlier in the week kind of some of the guys that we were excited to see and quote unquote picks to click, that kind of thing. Dre, is there a particular player or two that you have a good feel for, that you're pretty sure they're going to get a lot of tick tomorrow, that you are excited to see?
Well, I want to see how the corners pan out. I mean, you got Isaac Yadam, you have Rock Ya-Sin, you got, the guy we drafted as well. His name is slipped my mind. I can't think of his name right now. Renardo Green. Thank you. I want to see how they play. I want to see how they perform out there because, look, we know what we're going to get out of Mooney Ward. We know what we're going to get out of Diamador Lenore. So I want to see what these guys have to bring. Malik Mustafa as well.
Johnny loves him.
Well, and here's the thing is that, like, we talk about, not to go back to it or anything, but we talk about, with the whole Brandon Aiyuk signing, how are we going to afford Diamador Lenore? How are we going to find or afford Mooney Ward? There's a chance that if we sign Brandon Aiyuk, we don't re-sign those two guys. Now, if that's the case, then which one of these cornerbacks are going to take their place? Right, so you have Darrell Luter Jr., you have Samuel Womack, and then let's not forget Ambry Thomas is still there. So let's see how these guys do, because there's a good chance that this is the future of our secondary. Obviously bearing whoever we acquire in the offseason next year, but these are the guys that we have to look at to determine who do we resign, or can we let both these guys walk, because these guys have stepped up and these guys are really going to shine in the secondary, or in the secondary. And also too, I want to see Gross Matos. I want to see what he does out there in terms of a pass rusher.
Yeah, so a lot on the defense. It looks like I'm excited to see if our defense as a whole should be pretty good this year, and the aura should be there no matter who is in there. We should be performing because I want to see what these defensive coordinators scheme up and that whole situation. Johnny, let's talk a little offense. I know your Dominic Puni is your guy, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna be watching that position. A lot of good reports coming out of him from camp. You know, guys like Brad Graham have been really singing his praises, which is something really, you know, we've expected on the show.
He's a lineman.
I've talked
Brad
about
knows
him for
lineman.
Yeah, Brad knows lineman. He's been paying attention. It's also very worth noting that once he slid into practicing with the ones, he has not given up that spot. Hasn't. That he's been holding up really well in one-on-ones, that he's really sharp in the mental side of it. Chris Forrester basically said he's been way better than we thought he was going to be. And they thought he was going to be probably pushing for a starting spot. So I love that. I want to see that. I want to see rotation there at center. I want to see what's going on with that. Want to see the depth at left guard behind Aaron Banks, you know, because he's kind of been banged up, missed some time there. And everything, because these are very important questions. You have to hit on Dominic Puni. He has to be a starter going forward, because again, you don't have Aaron Banks signed. You can't go and fill 2 guard spots next year. You're going to have to replace Trent Williams at some point. You got to address tackle. So these are positions that have got to be filled at some point here. I'm really interested to see how the running backs do. How much depth are we going to have in running back room? Are we going to put Elijah Mitchell on the trading block? I would not be surprised if we see something like what happened with Matt Breida, who's back with the team. Yeah. You know, they traded him off for I think a 5th round pick or 4th round pick back many years ago. I would see something very similar for Elijah Mitchell. And you know what? In the end, if they got a 5th or 6th for him, they spent a 6th on him. You're doing great if you get a guy who then you don't need anymore and you get the same draft capital back from him. So that's where I'm really interested in seeing what happens there with the running back rotation, and how do they handle up in pass pro? How do they handle their reads on the zone reads and stuff like that? That's what I'm really looking forward to. I like Dre said, I'm really looking forward to the corners, because I think one of Mooney or Demo is going to be moved on. It's more likely Mooney than Demo, just because he's the younger guy, has been more durable, really, throughout his time with San Francisco, and has been a top player. And I think the question there is going to become, is he paid like an outside corner or a guy that's paid as a slot guy? Now, he's going to see himself as an outside corner. I think the 49ers see him as an outside corner, and they're going to try and pay him accordingly. That's something that goes into that. You know, some people have been not to stay stuck on the Brandon Aiyuk situation, because this all plays into that. You have to hit these guys to make that situation. Domino. Yeah, it's because if they may be wanting to see some of these young guys through preseason before they make a full commitment in here with Brandon Aiyuk. You know, that may have been the case of what they were doing with Debo. You know, back during his, because he didn't sign until well into training camp. Yeah. And they wanted to see what did they have at some other positions, and did it look like they could let somebody go? Because, you know, people are saying, what happens if you let Brandon Aiyuk go and then Debo holds out for 30 next year? Well, Debo has $16.6 million in base salary next year. So you can do that. That actually works more than trying to do something like Brandon Aiyuk now, because you can say, okay, Debo, we'll give you a 3-year extension, and we're going to push get your cap number down by about $10 million and get you up to $30 million a year. So they could actually save about $10 million pushing Debo Samuel to $30 million a year on 2025. That you have that flexibility when you start committing to guys, and on the back end of these salaries with large base salaries, and you can start extending and pushing out that prorated bonus and spread it out over more years. So you have more flexibility with Debo than you do Brandon Aiyuk right now, because of 2025 coming around. The question is, does the cap go up as much in 2025 as it did in 2024? I don't think so, because you did have a big boost from the Amazon package and the COVID losses falling off. So it was more than they thought. But I want to see that. I want to see D Winners. I want to see Jalen Graham. I want to see these guys. I want to see them push DFF off the team. Not in that I have anything bad against DFF. I don't wish anything bad for him. I hope he gets picked up, plays for another team for 3 years, makes a lot of money. I really hope that for him. Everything I've seen from him, the guy's a puts everything out on the field, but I want an upgrade. I just want to see an upgrade over that because Dre Greenlaw has missed time. Almost certainly he's going to miss some time this year. Every year he misses time. He's a violent player that leads to more injuries. So do we have somebody behind them who can fill that spot and then maybe take over for him? I've talked about this. I talked about this going into the 2023 season, right, Adam? I was talking about that Dre Greenlaw was most likely going to be gone. Yeah. That at some point they're gonna have to let him walk. Yeah. And so that time is coming. They cannot pay him what he deserves to be paid. He's gonna pull a Devin White. He's gonna go, to another team and get paid more commensurate with what he should. That time is coming for him. So, can D Winters be that guy that steps in and replaces that? There's a lot of questions there. There's a lot of questions about defensive line depth. There's just questions. We have questions and questions and questions, and hopefully we'll start to get some answers.
So here's a question that I want to ask you, Johnny, and then get Dre's take on the answer. So because Strawberry Reacts asks about starters playing, and as we go through the whys and hows of the game, what I want to get your take on is to this question: what should we as Niner fans be looking for in the first preseason game? This is the first game. When we get to the second game, I'll ask you your thoughts on the second game. But on the first preseason game, what should we be looking for? And then Dre, your thoughts on how Johnny answers.
So things you want to look for. Do you get pushed to the point of attack in the run game? Do you see, and it's hard to see this stuff from the broadcast, but if you want to look at the details that you can pick some things up, look at the running backs. And when it's a running play, try and or pay attention to how many steps they're taking before they cut. That'll tell you how Shanahan feels about them.
Well, I'll be there, so I'll count for you.
Yeah. I mean, but if it seems like they're taking 7 or 8 steps before they cut, I don't care what yardage the guy got, Shanahan is not going to be happy with them. Bobby Turner's not going to be happy with them. So, that's where, again, sometimes we see these preseason stuff and guys will be running for a good amount of yards. Well, they're playing against really poor tacklers sometimes. Mm-hmm. And we'll get excited as fans. And then the guy's like cut at the end of the training camp. And you're like, why? Well, because they were able to break some tackles against guys who aren't going to be in the NFL anymore doesn't mean they were running the system well. So watch for that. Watch for what does the timing look like with the running backs? Does it look like they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cut? And I know it's hard not knowing that it's going to be a run coming and say, count those steps. But if you're looking for, some details to look at, that's something I look at. I look at how do safeties and backside linebackers pick up crossers, routes crossing the field. A lot of times people will put those on corners and say, oh man, this guy was wide open. A lot of times that responsibility is on a weak side linebacker or a safety. And so are those being picked up? Or if teams are running crossers all day long, that's most likely with our defense, a problem with a weak side linebacker or a safety. So that's where you start, instead of saying, our corners can't cover there, start looking at those are the issues. If teams aren't able to run those and they're running a lot of comeback routes, I'm okay with that because that should be a fairly easy throw. That means that another team is trying to do something just to move the ball. If that happens, don't freak out on our corners. The way that defenses are played in the preseason, those will be open all day long. But teams want to see, can their quarterback process more than that? Can their receivers run more than that? They're trying to evaluate their guys. So, if you're seeing a lot of comebacks and short outs, like 8 to 12 yard outs, that's actually a really good sign for our defense. So, those are the things that people need to be looking into.
Dre, get in there.
Well, and I think that on the other side, on the offensive side as well, it's like, who's the quarterback? Who's going to be quarterbacking and who's going to be able to process the plays and be able to distribute the ball? You got Josh Dobbs. You got not Jared Allen. What's his name? Josh Allen. That's not it.
Brandon Allen.
So many Allens.
Combine a bunch of names and just put it together.
But you got Dobbs, Allen, and then you got Tanner Mordecai. So we're probably going to see all three of them throughout this game. Now, granted, whoever comes in last is going against the third string, fourth string, defensive backs. But
Fans
still,
from the stands, I think,
Yeah.
in Tennessee, that's kind of
Adam's going to be out there too, just playing defense. But I want to see how they handle it. I want to see what they do because over the shoulder catch. No, but I want to see how they
Willie
handle
Mays
it
out
because
there.
yeah, I know.
Willie Mays Hayes, more like.
Doing the splits. But I want to see how they handle the offense. I mean, we know what we're going to get out of Brock Purdy. I mean, we saw him even early on in the preseason last year. He looked really good, Brock Purdy. So now it's time to see what Dobbs and Allen and Mordecai can do. I would imagine Josh Dobbs is going to start the game. I would think he's the next man up in terms of quarterback number 2. Although I've heard some bad reports coming out of camp that he hasn't been very accurate. Brandon Allen doesn't have a very strong arm, and I've heard a lot of good things out of about Tanner Mordecai. So we'll see how these three kind of play on Saturday. But I want to see how they do, the three of them, and which one looks better.
See, and so go with the quarterbacks. Another thing to be looking for, because people usually it's a results oriented analysis. Look for the timing, how timing, the snappiness of the timing in their feet is what I'm trying to say. So if they're dropping back, you're seeing that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom, hitch, ball out. Okay, watch that. That is something to feel good about. If it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hitch, throw the ball, and it's a completion, I'm not as excited about that.
You're talking about Trey Lance.
And now, so here's the thing I want to point out. This is a little full circle moment that I can tie in. So when Brock Purdy first played his very first down in the preseason, I texted my buddy Miles, who is my co-host on Sports Idiot Nation. So there's a tie-in. So again, be sure to check out Sports Idiot Nation on all social media and our YouTube channel. But now I said, because of that, he was doing this. You guys will remember, hopefully, that when Brock Purdy first stepped foot on a football field against another team was in the preseason, and he was doing those things pretty good. And that's what was exciting from the get-go.
Yeah. He showed an understanding of the timing of this. This offense is so timing based. My issue with Trey Lance, and I talked about this so many times over the years, and not to make this about Trey Lance, but just again, I'm just thankful that this is going to be probably the least drama preseason game we've had in years, because there's not going to be all this drama that comes out of preseason off the game. There's still the Brandon Aiyuk drama, but for a first time in a long time, a preseason game equals less drama. Because last 3 years, every preseason game was, now we're going to argue over how a quarterback has performed and that they should be doing this or doing that with them after preseason. But one of my issues there was there were so many throws that became second window throws where the first window was open and he didn't throw it. And so that's why I say it's not just a results oriented analysis with your quarterbacks. It's not just they made this throw or that they completed this many passes. That was why Sam Darnold was ahead in the depth chart last year over Trey Lance, was because the ball was getting into the first window throws. It wasn't always being completed. Now, some of those were not on Sam Darnold. Some of them were. There's a reason Sam Darnold is now looking like he's going to be the starting quarterback with the Vikings. But that's the analysis you have to look at, because that's what Shanahan is looking at. He wants to know, when you see it, can you react to it? Can you hit that first window? It doesn't matter if the guy's got a big, huge arm. I don't care about that. I care more, like, that's a bonus if a guy can have a little more zip on the ball and everything. But if you're not hitting it in the first window, that extra zip means nothing. It means nothing because you're holding the ball for longer. That means the pass rush can get there sooner. That means you can't use that rocket arm. So when you were watching these different guys, look for the timing in the feet. Are they taking a bunch of extra hitches? If they're taking a bunch of extra hitches, not a good sign.
Now, one thing to point out, as I'm getting some insider information from the guys from Sports Idiot Nation, one of those is Titans Idiot Nation, 30,000 followers on Facebook. I will be hanging out with those boys later. He did just text me and saying that Callahan has stated that the starters will play during the preseason and that tomorrow they will get a couple of series. Now, I don't think that is the case for most of our guys. So
No.
just
No.
just a quick, just one little quick point. As I head out, guys, I am on my way to Nashville soon. So you guys carry the ship for me. I'm out of here, but I wanted to give you that little, the text literally came through on my phone. There you see it right there. Just came through. So just wanted to share that. That's something else that you guys can talk about, that maybe in the first quarter we may be down 10-0. I don't know, based on that. Not that the score really matters, but
Right.
hopefully we can hold our own against some of the starters. I don't know if Will Levis literally is one of those guys. Be interesting to see what he does. I know this isn't a Tennessee Titans show, but be interesting. So I'm getting out of here. If you are in Nashville, make sure you email us at Johnny Dell's Football Academy at gmail.com if you're going to be in Nashville, as well as if you're going to be Monday Night Football. Dre, that goes for you too. If you're around the area for Monday Night Football, I am going. Technician, I'm driving. I'm not that far. I'm in Indiana. So I'm actually driving to Nashville. That's why I'm leaving now, because the party starts early, boys. I got a party tonight, and then wake up and do it all again Saturday. And then after the game, going to be party hardy, and then get back into town so I can sleep Sunday and be ready for the show on Monday and discuss. We will have some film to go over because I'm going to take it. I'm going to take some film and send it to Johnny.
Nice.
So he'll have some literal footage here to go off of, and we can talk about the choppy feet and all that. So Dre, good to see you, brother. Take it here, Johnny, and I will see you guys soon.
Safe travels,
All right,
man.
Adam. See you later.
Yep.
Yeah. So Shanahan talked about whether or not starters were going to play, and his answer was a couple of them pretty much have to. And I think he's meaning like some of the special teams guys, but
Yeah.
I would be, I think Pooney might be the only real starter to get some reps. Maybe Leonard Floyd just playing in a new system. I would still be a little bit surprised if he got any real snaps. I just don't see, Jair Brown maybe will get some snaps. Maybe George Odom, just because of, with Hufanga there, the depth not being quite what they want. But I just don't see them playing many starters. The Titans are still trying to figure out who their starters are going to be. So
that's why they're like, our starters are going to start.
Yeah, they're going to have a few. They're going to have a few. They think they have an idea, but they want to get a few reps to see. They need to start building some chemistry there in the timing of a lot of things with their quarterback. Even just getting in and out of the huddle, like that seems so rudimentary. But it's one thing when you're doing it in camp. It's another thing when you're doing it in front of a live crowd and the officials
audience,
and the TV timeouts and all that stuff. I mean, because that really does disrupt the timing of can your quarterback be in the huddle during those moments? Everybody needs to get into that rhythm to where it just becomes you're not thinking about any of that stuff. You're just doing it. So they have to go through all that. The 49ers don't. They don't need to go through all that. So, and I think you also have left tackle where it's technically going to be a starter that ends up playing for a lot more reps, but that's because Trent Williams is not there. So I don't see much of you're going to see a lot of guys, eating sunflower seeds on the sideline.
Yeah. No, I don't think we're going to see really any of the starters. I mean, just looking over at their depth chart, pretty much everyone who's on the second or third, they're going to be in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, within the depth chart. We're not going to see – you might see Juwan Jennings. I think that's somebody that you might see in the opening possession, and then he'll be gone. But Chris Conley's going to be out there. I think Ronnie Bell, Danny Gray, hopefully. Robbie Chosen, perhaps, although he just got here, so probably not. Trent Taylor. So you're going to see a lot of the guys that are trying to make the team and a lot of the guys who need to be evaluated if they're going to be a contributor to this roster. And like you were saying, that's the kind of the state that they're in right now, is to say, okay, we know who our starters are, but how does everyone else, kind of shake out? Leonard Floyd, I don't think is going to play at all. Him dealing with some knee injuries. They're going to hold him out because, I mean, this is a guy we signed because, he's very durable. The guy doesn't get hurt. He's always playing. And then right away he gets hurt. You're like, oh my God. I still don't know if Leonard Floyd was the right choice. I think it was an easy choice, but it could have been sexier, but we'll see how Floyd does. Malik Collins might be out there, but I think you'll see Jordan Elliott, Robert Beal will be out there, Devondre Campbell. But I want to see Jalen Graham. I've been hearing a lot of good things about Jalen Graham, that he's been flying around the field. Him and D. Winters have really stepped up in training camp, so I want to see how they perform out there against hopefully some of their quote unquote starters for the Tennessee Titans. I mean, their starting quarterback is Will Levis. Oh, we have breaking news.
Levis.
She's like, the starters for the Titans are going to play.
Yeah. Her pop-up timer may be going. I may need to bounce at her. We've been going for a little over an hour.
Yeah,
She's
definitely.
Fascinated by seeing what is going on here. This is my daughter, Gemma. But I think, with everything, we're going to see a lot of good competition in that second and third area. So, for you, what would you see as a win? Not necessarily a win in, they won, but a win in the 49ers have gotten something better out of all of that.
That was awesome right there.
Coming out of the preseason game. Like for you, if Monday morning, you would say this was a huge win for the 49ers because what would it be?
I would say a huge win would be that the quarterbacks aren't turning the ball over. I mean, that's the one position that anybody who's a hardcore fan to just a fair weather fan could tell you that, like, hey, that guy sucks or that guy's struggling, and you're going to see it right away. I want Josh Dobbs to look good. He might only get 2 possessions, or he might get the first quarter. Who knows? But I want to see how the quarterbacks do. I want to see how the receivers do. Now, obviously, Ricky Pearsall is not going to be out there because he's hurt. And it feels like this is a reoccurring statement, is that Ricky Pearsall is hurt. This is the second time he's been hurt so far in training camp leading into preseason. So, but like I said, I want to see how the quarterbacks do, and I want to see how the corners do. If they can get some pass deflections and break some stuff up, that's going to be a good sign for the Niners moving forward.
Exactly. Well, Dre, thank you so much for joining us in here.
Of course.
And I'll say for Rick, my daughter does look a little bit like me. She looks a lot more like her mother. My other 2 kids look a lot more like me as she's dropping some headphone jack there. But thank you guys so much for sticking in with us, for hanging out with us.
She's trying to get geared up.
She is. She's trying to get ready for the season.
Give me a headset.
Yeah. Yeah, they're usually asking me most nights, Daddy, why are you always on the computer? I'm like, I'm breaking down film, baby girl.
I don't know what?
But yeah, so she's like, what? You talking about me? But anyways, to all the faithful listeners and everybody, we will be back at you with you Monday morning talking about the preseason game and everything that's going on. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and go Niners.
Go Niners.